You're listening to The Last Straw, the show about reclamation, reinvention, and momentum, hosted by executive leadership and reinvention strategist, Christy Straw.
Blue tile, really dusty grout. A floor that probably had seen as many workouts as it had midnight meltdowns from people who had visited. That was certainly my story, as I found myself laying there as an executive woman who had worked over 20 years to find her way into the C-suite and on the blue tile, dusty, grouted floor. And all of us, I think, have this moment in our lives eventually where we're like, damn, no, this is the last straw. And that was my last straw. Welcome in. We are going to talk about all the things as it relates to corporate America, executive leadership, pivots, psychological flexibility, and all sorts of other good stuff throughout our next 15, 20 minutes together. This podcast is my love letter to executive leadership. Tune in. Send it to people who need to hear the truth that we often don't talk about, but is certainly swallowed in the silence of all the hallways we've walked for so many years. All right? So listen, my face is on the floor, and you're thinking, wait, why? Go back to that story. Why is your face on the floor, girl? That was the least of my concerns that day. Sick as a dog, late for an executive meeting, face on the floor, and puke in my hair. To find out that my executive assistant said, Christy, our CEO said you're dramatic because you got sick in the meeting today. I got dramatic. That's what I got, I was dramatic for being sick in a meeting today. And so I excused myself down to the corporate gym. And that's when I was so ill, laying on that floor, and I thought to myself, what would my daughters think to see me now? Because this is not the same mama that they see walk out the door every morning to work. And here I am, reduced to tears and frustration and not even having the dignity to just be ill because instead I was chirping or I was dramatic. And so all of this realization, climbing a ladder, recognizing that I had spent all this time climbing a ladder that never once actually asked me who I was or how I was. And it was in those moments that the silence was louder than any applause ever could be. And I thought to myself, if this is success, then I'm done playing by these rules. And so what did I do? What did I do? Did I quit right away? No. Did I want to? Hell yeah. Let it be known that I wanted to quit right away. I was feeling very much at rock bottom. But what I recognized, y'all, is that rock bottom is not a tragedy. It is the truth slapping us in the face to say, hey, what the hell are we going to do next? And my, hey, what the hell am I going to do next was to adjust my sails. I thought about apologizing. I'm embarrassed to tell you all that I thought about apologizing for being ill, for having a natural human bodily function. And I only thought about it for about 8 minutes because it was just so redonkulous. And that's a word, credit to my husband who uses the word redonkulous when it is so stupid. He can't focus on what I'm saying. And I thought to myself as I was laying on the floor, sick as a little dog, should I apologize to make this better? And I thought, that's a redonkulous thought. You're certainly not doing that. But I knew that something had to give. And so that whisper to myself actually became a vow. And it became the beginning of what I like to call my reinvention. And so as you see me today, listen, I tell you that I didn't quit the job, but I did quit pretending. I absolutely quit pretending. My body was finally allowed to catch up to the truth that my brain had been avoiding for the last 20 years, which is that I was burnt out. My nervous system was absolutely dysregulated. I wasn't very friendly at times. I was super defensive, working through a lot of my own insecurity and all the other good things that come from really kind of reckoning with yourself about what you want for your future. And so I started walking into meetings knowing that life's architecture for myself and for my family was about to change. That breakdown on that blue floor actually became my blueprint for everything that has followed since. And in the less than 2 years since corporate, let me tell you, there has been a lot. What we're going to talk about on the Last Straw podcast is never going to be solely about the collapse. It's always going to be about the momentum, the reinvention, the recalibration, and what that looks like. And when we stop negotiating with our inner knowing, we start seeing patterns in people, in places, in culture, in family. And I started seeing it everywhere. I saw it with my clients. I saw it with my friends. I saw it in boardrooms. Brilliant people absolutely disconnected from themselves. And I thought to myself, there has to be a different way, right? 20 years in corporate leadership, seeing 5 similar patterns across all sorts of people and very industry agnostic, right? I started building something called authentic authority. And authentic authority is not granted by your title. It's actually lived through alignment. And note to self, for those who don't know, because you might not know this, burnout is actually a response to constantly having to chameleonize yourself to fit in. I'm talking about like shape-shifting, chameleonizing yourself. All of the things that we have to do every day to fit into different spaces ultimately lead to burnout. And I often thought to myself, why am I so different by showing up authentically? And I began to scribble out a quiz across these 5 personality, like intricacies and patterns that I started seeing across all sorts of different groups of people across every single industry. And what were they? Well, there's a strategist, which is what my son Kingston is. For any of you who follow me along, you know my kids are pretty much in the spotlight with me sometimes. Kingston's a strategist. They're the most rare archetype, and they blend EQ with data. There's an anchor, which I'm an anchor. My husband's an anchor. Most of my clients are anchors. And we are super grounded, and we can create transformation really quickly. Then we have our visionary types who see all the big picture and are called dreamers, as though that might be something negative. We have the architects who pay me often and are the number 1 type that actually hire me because they're tired of being second and never seeing the fruits of all of their hard work behind the scenes. And then we have the catalyst. And fun fact, if you're watching this and you can see what I'm wearing, this is very catalyst energy because you will always recognize a catalyst in that they're a damn good time and they have amazing clothes. Okay? So these are the 5 ways that leaders express their own truth and build trust. And that's what I have built everything around since leaving corporate. So my love letter to you, corporate America, is this: the Authentic Authority Archetype Quiz, because patterns are very recognizable in people. And as soon as we understand how we're naturally wired to lead and influence and frankly to sell stuff, well, the world gets a whole lot easier. This has been tested with clients, and they're so emotional when they recognize who they are and how they're naturally wired to lead. And the number 1 thing they say to me is, Christy, am I too much this way? Is something the matter with me? Why am I always playing second fiddle, having done all the damn work? Now, I want you to know, my dear listeners, that I just described 3 different archetypes to you and their pain points that I hear every day. And so I'm here to tell you this isn't about personality typing. It's actually more a mirror for yourself, and how you're naturally wired to show up in the world and how people already receive you. So much insight here because when you see how you're naturally wired to lead, you stop performing and you start belonging. Your ability to filter conversations, difficult discomfort, and other moments that typically don't have clarity around them for you will start to become much more clear. Because each archetype is unique, but they all build upon the same currency, which everybody buys. And who knows what that is? What is the currency that everybody buys? I wish I had like an audience thing with questions, because I would tell you it's trust. Everybody is buying trust. We are saturated, drenched, and frankly, I could puke over all of the AI things that I see every day. I don't know if any of the rest of you feel this way. I love AI. It's great. I love that it's automating things. I'm not an anti-AI person. But what I am, more than anything, is a person who recognizes nobody's buying anything from you, including your kid, who you might be telling to eat his carrots later tonight. He's not buying that from you if he doesn't trust you. Think about it. If you told your kid, right, eat your vegetables, it's really good, you're going to love it, but you set a Brussels sprout in front of a 2-year-old child with a pretty limited taste bud proliferation at this point, it'd probably be pretty tricky. I don't know that they would trust you any longer after they tried a Brussels sprout and you told them it was good and you know damn well y'all did not like Brussels sprouts when you were 2. All right? So don't at me. Don't anybody say I'm different. I liked it too, because I promise you probably didn't. All right. But maybe you like them now. But the point is, you can't even sell the idea of eating a Brussels sprout to your child at dinner if they don't trust you. And that is everything that the archetype brings to the world, which is how do we monetize that trust? All right. That's important. And so when you see how you're wired, like I said, you're going to stop performing. You're going to start belonging. You're going to understand what your currency factor is and how you naturally build trust. And you're going to recognize that it's the trust that has helped you move your career along, if you think back on it, probably more than your actual results that you've had. So how does this all relate to me and rebuilding and reinventing? All right. I had to understand my own archetype. I was an anchor. Of course I was hurt. Of course I was pretty devastated when I knew things weren't going to work out, right? But my archetype and understanding also how I can move through and be more resilient is what pulled me out of my burnout. I completely showed up the next day after the puke in the hair and stopped giving a flying flip about what anybody thought. I was asked, are you going to apologize for being late to a meeting for being ill? And I literally laughed in her face. To this day, it's a moment of pride. Because that was my natural reaction. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that somebody wanted me to apologize to a CEO for being ill after being called dramatic for needing to be sick. Okay? So what they started getting from me was the real, authentic Christy in every situation. And I learned that you don't have to earn authority by performing. You build it by simply being. All right? And that sense of being is what I've built into every keynote, every framework, and every movement since I've left. We've talked about the Authentic Authority Archetype Quiz. Take it. You can find it on my website, lighthouseleadershipconsultants.com. Take the quiz, shoot me a note. I want to know how you are responding to finding out what your patterns are and what your mirror might look like. And tell me more, right? Tell me more about where you see a fit and maybe where you don't. All right, we've created the Unicorn Leader Framework, which is nationwide now and a best-selling book on Amazon, which you can find. And Unicorn being a high EQ leadership framework that can help you build these skills and also the skills to recognize the bullshit, right? To recognize situational awareness and to recognize when you're not wanted at a table and it is time to build your own. All right, all of that has been baked into the last 18 months of me leaving corporate. All right. So how do I coach people to do this? Why are you tuning in? What sort of tactical thing can you take away today? Well, first of all, build your business around who you are and not what you do, right? How many of us say, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself? And the first thing you say is, well, I'm an ER physician. Okay, I understand that's what you do, but who the hell are you? Right? This is just being a relationship-oriented person, and it will take you very far, right? So build a business around who you are. And if you don't know who you are, take your Authentic Authority Archetype Quiz and let's see what you think. And then you start showing up in ways where trust becomes your currency. Visibility literally becomes capital. I'm living that life. And your momentum becomes inevitable, all right? You are not broken however you're wired. You're breaking open maybe, like I did on the grout that was dusty, cobalt blue floor. And that's holy work. That is holy work, y'all. So start with the quiz. All right. Take it, check out, see where you're at and what you think. All right. But here's what I'm excited about. We have a couple minutes left in our show. I told you it was going to be impactful. I told you that it was going to be the most potent 20 minutes of your week. And damn it, it's going to be. All right. We have something called the Ribbon of Reckoning segment, and it will happen on every single podcast that we do together. And basically, it's a recurring truth meets traction moment. So every guest who comes on, every episode that I have, we are going to talk about the Ribbon of Reckoning. All right. So what is my ribbon? Well, I have my ribbon here. I'm going to show it to you. It is so cute. I made these myself, everybody, because hello, we are bootstrapping in public. All right, I am a founder, not a millionaire yet. And this little ribbon says, the Last Straw Podcast, Ribbon of Reckoning, bet on yourself. And so listen, what ribbon am I giving myself today? Well, today's Ribbon of Reckoning is never to confuse exhaustion with achievement. All right. So many women and a few brave men come to me and they are the fixer executive who literally realize they have zero freaking boundaries. And if they had any at all, they were broken. All right. And so what do? We negotiate what that looks like. And within 6 weeks, we have a whole different executive showing up in the room and lots of different outcomes happening for her. And that is the whole entire point of this podcast. All right. So listen, speaking your truth is never problematic. We can certainly find ways to do it in which it's more easily received. And we can certainly find ways to do it in which are highly emotionally intelligent, kind, and caring. All right. So you have heard all about my last straw moment today. And you don't have to wait for a collapse, okay? You can choose your reckoning right now. Hey, you want to earn a ribbon of reckoning, you need to come on this show. You need to take the quiz, all right? And let's start that conversation, all right? The life you want is not actually waiting for you to work harder. And I know that that's really hard for people who are highly achievement-oriented to believe. It's waiting for you to tell the damn truth about who you are, what you truly think, and how you want to show up and impact the world. This has been another episode of the Last Straw Podcast. Let's tell the truth and build something better from it.